This is the Panama Canal Mule, number 662. I'm Darren, and this is the Industrial Revolution. Mules were used to pull ships on canals for, well, really as long as canals have been around. When the Panama Canal was built, the ships were far, far bigger, and a standard mule wasn't going to work anymore. So instead of that, these were built. These mules are diesel electrics. They were built by General Electric. This particular mule, all of the mules on the Pacific side at the Pedro Miguel locks were built by General Electric. This is one of 20 with the Pedro Miguel locks. The Pacific or the Atlantic side, the mules were a little bit different, but still pretty similar. They run a 5-foot gauge, which is not the standard US gauge, even though they were built in the US and the US built the Panama Canal. The reason for that is that 5-foot gauge was the largest gauge that US railroad manufacturers were routinely producing. They were producing it for Russian railroads. By making the gauge a little bit wider, that allowed you to have a little bit more stability. And normally, of course, trains have all of their force out the end. With the mules, all the force is straight to the side. So the better you can do for managing that, the less likely you are to roll over your mule and dump it into the canal. These mules actually ran at 3 different speeds. You had a 5-mile-an-hour speed, which is what they'd use when they weren't towing a ship. And when they hooked up to a ship, they did slow down. They ran either 1 or 2 miles an hour, depending on the size of the ship and where they were. It was geared down so that they had more torque, and unlike most locomotives, these are actually cog railways. Let me show you. It's a little hard to see, but under the center you have a cog drive sticking down. Fortunately, this isn't the only mule of the original 20. There's another one at the Virginia Museum of Transportation, and that one underwent some restoration. We have a bunch of photos on their Facebook page. It's Save the Mule on Facebook. There's a link in the description. And we can see the gear system much better. So if you look at this photo of the original locks, you see there's actually a lot of train lines alongside the canal route. What that is a fully cog-driven rail line directly on each side of the lock, right next to the lock. And away from that, you have a train line which is not fully cog-driven. There's a shared rail line in the center. Those are used to reposition the mules from one end to the other as needed. However, there is a very steep hill each time you go up into a new lock, and for that section they did need to engage the cog drive. The rest of the transport section does not have the cog rack on it. Here you can see the cable winch mechanism. This is what the mule's all about. This is used to connect up to the ships, pull them into the locks, and apply braking before the ship actually goes too far through the lock and smashes into the next gate. This is the whole purpose for these mules. So the Panama Canal that we have today is not the first attempt to get across Panama. In fact, overland routes had existed for a long, long time. First they were land routes. Later, the U.S. actually built a railroad across Panama, which opened in 1855. The French attempted to build a sea-level canal across Panama, which would have required no locks. They attempted that from 1881 until 1899, when they finally gave up. There's just too much elevation change. The ground just wasn't conducive to it at all. The U.S. Government took it over, and in 1904 began work on constructing it. And in 1914, the first ship was able to transit the Panama Canal. So these are still in use. Not this particular model, there's a newer version in use, but very similar to this. And without these, the Panama Canal would have never been able to open. Ships just can't get through the locks under their own power. There's just not enough room for that. So you needed something like this. That's why, although this isn't a canal, this isn't a steam engine, nonetheless, this is the Industrial Revolution. Anyway, I do need your help to keep this channel going. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe. Also, I do have a Patreon page over at patreon.com/industrialrevolution if you could help out there. This channel obviously involves a lot of travel to come out and see stuff like this. So if you could help me out, I'd appreciate that. Memberships start at just a few bucks a month.